everybody, and welcome to Prophecy Walkers. I'm Hazel, and this is Alistair. And today we want to talk about the illuminated energies that are coming through this summer. And we are right in the high point of the summer solstice, but it's not just one day, it's a whole arc over the next 6 weeks. So, how does living in true sacred union, true sacred partnership with these evolutionary consciousness energies that are affecting us and bombarding us right now, how is this helping us? How is this helping us heal? How is this helping us evolve? And today I'm going to be interviewing Alistair about some evolutionary aspects of working together in partnership and the impact that this has together as a couple, as an evolutionary partnership that is breaking out of the old way of relating and moving into what is we are heading towards as a humanity of really truly connecting with each other. And we are merging this with the summer energies, because this summer solstice is extremely powerful, but it's not all love and light. There's a lot of darkness that gets exposed in this light. So we're going to be discussing some of this and talking about some of this right now. Do you have anything to add before we get started?
Yeah, I've found, I don't know about you guys and girls, found this summer solstice very difficult. We've been having a big build up to this solstice behind the scenes. Hazel and I, we work with all the different portals, the moons, the full moons, the new moons, the solstices, the equinoxes, and we treat our life ceremonially. And I've found that this solstice has been, how do I say, quite difficult. And we've been talking about the exposure in the light. In the winter solstice, we get the darkness, and we've got to remember we've got one half of the planet is actually in the winter solstice. The southern hemisphere, they're actually in the dark, and the northern hemisphere, which is where the majority of the population are, in the summer energy. And in the summer energy, there is the exposure in the light where people hide in the light. So there's like that, we can discuss around spiritual bypass, the hiding in spirituality, these kind of things are coming up. And there's some really big collective themes going on, like war. Yeah. And Hazel and I have spent the last 5 years of healing that separation between man and woman, healing the war. And we know how difficult it is to channel hop and scroll. So pay attention, because we're going to deliver some gold here.
Yes, yeah. So really great to have you on board, and thank you for being here. Also, just going to pop in, we're opening up the Prophecy Portal. It's our new Patreon community that we're opening. And if you'd like to be part of the first members to join us as part of that, then please click on the link below and help us be part of this something new, really, that like really grounded, really living in this new energy that's emerging, because there's lots of talk about it, but to what extent can we actually live it? And that's what we're doing. So we invite you to join us and into these evolutionary discussions of really grounding the conscious energies that are available. So this includes this conversation that we're going to have today, which is about the challenges that arise in the exposure energy. This is often when, let's like bring it back into partnership. Let's keep opening the subject and then bringing it back into how this works in relating. Because when the relationship starts to open up, let's say, so you have this container of a relationship when you first meet people. When the container starts expanding or starts cracking. I'm like seeing this vase right now, like with the gold cracks, like it has to crack open. Like the egg of that relationship has to crack open so that the light can come in. That light that comes in exposes what has not been seen before in relationship. And this is where the opportunity for healing is. Most people, when the rose-tinted glasses come off, like let's say old paradigm relating, the rose-tinted glasses come off, or the honeymoon period is over. We didn't do it like that, by the way. We had no honeymoon period. We were totally living a new paradigm of relating ever since the beginning. But when that honeymoon period is over, like 1 to 2 years, those rose tinted glasses come off. You start to see each other for who you truly are without the masks. That's when either more masks start coming in to try and maintain what you had already built, or the cracks start happening, and then arguments happening, etc., etc. Separation starts happening. But the fact of the matter is that that separation was already there within you, and that was the foundation of your relationship not working. Now, this is the gold, because when you come into sacred partnership, and we are right now in this evolutionary phase of being able to hold and work through these energies of new way communicating through these evolutionary energies, you will see that when things start opening, let's say, cracking, so that one's shadow can be mirrored in the other, and you are working as a witnesser together, those things that start cracking open and getting revealed, your shadows, my shadows, those are the places where we're able to heal each other. And this is how profound living a true sacred relationship is, because you realize how much love there is when you meet each other in these wounded places and find out how to love each other through those cracks every time. So, what would you like to say about how you have experienced moving out of an old paradigm relationship and into this healing vortex, this truly conscious partnership that we're in? How have you witnessed that within yourself?
From an old paradigm to this?
Yeah.
Well, it's quite simple. The first thing I noticed is that we both wanted to heal ourselves. So we had that shared joint purpose, which I've never had before. And I said on my own channel that that's one of the things that happens when you meet a true twin flame. And I'm not so sure, because I've been through it myself, and I know you have as well, that people really understand that they're not with their twin flame. Because the first thing that we noticed about, when we realized we were twin flames, I mean, there were so many indicators. But the first one is we started as best friends. We were friends for nearly a year before we admitted any feelings towards each other. But then there were all these clues that started coming up, like we started journeying together, and my middle name means twin, and that came up, and there was loads of weird stuff like that was coming up. But the main thing, which I think is the most enjoyable part of our relationship, is that when we were on this journey of healing, we would sit opposite each other and say, "Oh, this is coming up for me," and what does that mean? And you would sit opposite me without judgment or humiliation, and go, "Well, what memory comes up if I ask you this question?" It's like, "Oh, this comes up," and, "Well, how does that make you feel?" And we just started this huge Mulder and Scully investigation into ourselves, and it exposed all the lies in my life. And because of that, and you did warn me, it completely destroyed my life. But what replaced it was even greater and much more fun. But it exposed the lies of my friendships, relationships, family, society, government. I had to quit my job. It was like my whole life was just coming to a complete end. And the more I grew, the deeper we went, the more clearing we did, the more I started to shine. And people around me they just couldn't handle my love. And the friendships, relationships just started becoming really toxic, or I would ask people, do you want to do this? Do you want to participate in this? Should we do this? And there was always an excuse. And I felt this like my whole life, that when I start showing people love, I had to retract and go inside because I would just scare people away with my love. But you didn't, and I was actually quite afraid of you, but I just kind of sat in it like you taught me. And to be honest, I felt like on our journey, I was beaten in the majority of my life from as a little kid to an adult. But you were beaten emotionally. And so I saw that common link thread between us, is that nobody could deal with our love, nobody could handle us, and nobody wanted to do the level of depth and truth that you and I wanted. Like we just wanted, and we still do, just complete purity, complete integrity, like straight down the line. No nonsense, no lies, just complete exposure. And we were honest with each other from day one, weren't we? And I think that's extremely rare.
Yeah, I think so. And this brings up an amazing subject of desire, and which is, we can also link to the desires of what do you want this summer? Like, what do you? I wrote in a post yesterday. I said, fling away the summer fling. Just stop that. Stop your dating apps. Stop that hole within yourself that has not been met in love, because that is the place which is like these demons inside, which is going, I want that, I desire that, I desire that, I want that in a partner. They've got to look like this, have this color hair, they've got to have this much money, they've got to have that kind of car. Like on a very superficial level. On a more spiritual level, they need to be conscious. He needs to, he needs to have this and this or whatever. She needs to be this. And from my experience, that's okay. It will get you past the first certain level of clearing in relating. However, when it comes really to welcoming your soul partnership, your twin flame, and a sacred partnership, desire has to go completely out of the window, because otherwise you will not be able to meet the frequency, the pure frequency of the other. And we worked through this quite intensively, because it, like you said, it was about a year we were as friends, and we had in behind the scenes, I know because we've spoken about it, there was all these desires coming up. Like there was these desires in me, like, oh, he's actually really attractive, but this other part of me was like, no, I'm not going to go into relating in this way ever again. Oh, but he's matching everything up in terms of what I would want, and I allowed our investigations and our processes as part of my cleaning process as well, even before we met up. And not, I think one of the beautiful things was that we were in two different countries. We were meeting occasionally, every couple of months or something, as friends. We were meeting online every day. This was during lockdown, and doing this investigation work. And so we were going beyond desire. We were meeting as soul and soul. And I think that is so profound. It's such a profound way to meet somebody. It's such a neutral, blank canvas way to meet somebody. Because when you haven't got that lustful desire of needing to be met, you're able to finally meet someone. What do you think about that?
Think about what you said. You spoke like for 5 minutes. I was expecting the next question. You start talking about desire. So what?
Yeah.
What's the question?
So how would you, as a man, look at coming out of desire?
Okay. So there's a really difficult journey, because essentially it's based on sexual lust. And The difficulty I had was I was pre-programmed by the patriarchy, playing that part of the toxic masculine, to believe in what, the painting of what a beautiful woman should and could look like, right? And you were in no state to be in that position. She was essentially going through a nervous breakdown, just had a narcissistic divorce, and then I turn up on her door and I'm like, "Hi, my name's Alistair. Nice to meet you." And then walk off, and then essentially we met for dinner that night with some friends, just to introduce to each other. And she was telling me about the abuse she was going through, and she had these eyes where you could see she just stared into the abyss, but she was still there. She was close to completely just losing the plot. She was in deep betrayal, and she started describing what she was going through, and I go, "That's narcissism." And she was stood up when I told her, and she just, like, her whole body, she's got this boom, like this walking, and she just looked straight ahead like this, like I was to the side. And then she looked at me and she sat down at the table and she said, "How do you know this?" And I said, "Well, because um, that's how I would have treated you, and I'm healing narcissism." And you were like, and you just went quiet. I remember you were looking down and said, like, we just continued the conversation with the other people on the table while Hazel's going. And it's like staring into space, like, what has just happened, right?
Mm, yeah. It was the biggest bomb drop that my body reacted to.
Sorry, you asked me a
Yeah.
question, didn't you,
About
about
desire.
desire?
Yeah. So how do you move from the old paradigm desires of what you want in a relationship to what we have?
Yeah, and so, well, it took a long time to understand uh, lust. We weren't in a sexual relationship, and I always said, I've said on my own channel that to delay that as long as possible, to really enjoy um, being friends before any of that, because it does get more difficult when you introduce sex into a relationship, making love. And there's so much cleaning that needs to be done on that. But as a man, personally, um, I started to understand that my attraction to what feminine should or could look like was based on my mind, not my heart. And that was a whole journey that I had to take. That's essentially why I was there when I met you, was like, help me open my heart. Because every time, every 5 minutes, you're like, "Can you feel it? Can you feel me?" And I'm like, "Oh, are you asking me that again?" "No, I don't. I can't. I don't know how to do that." And so, that took me on the journey of trying to understand love. And you took me on that journey. You stripped everything away, all the lies of what I believed love to be. And it was really painful. I made huge sacrifices. Every man around me who I spoke about would just, well, eventually they would just all betray me. And because they were either, you know, obsessed with what they believed in, or they were in a relationship, and as soon as they started to understand what I was trying to tell them, they freaked out because they knew it was true.
Mm,
Knew it was true. And the first immediate thought of every man who I've approached who's been in a relationship is, I'm going to lose my woman.
mm,
And come to think about it now, that's because it exposes the lies within them. So they know that they're with that woman for the wrong reason, because they're using them for sex.
yeah.
And that's what this is based on, this question. Like, we didn't meet in lustful desire, and because of that, your relationship starts from a pure place. And you can it's an incredible foundation, an emotional foundation, a structure that is built on truth and non-judgment. And essentially what I learned, and I've done a video on this, the sexualization of the feminine, the dance of water. I learned through dancing, which I know sounds silly, but I would never dance in front of anyone. But when Hayes and I were doing our ceremonies together, part of my expression of overcoming density, because I was in a really bad place mentally, was I had to start expressing my joy for my love of music. And when I was on my own in my bedroom, I would dance. But I realized, oh, I can't dance like this in front of other people, because I had this judgment that it was feminine because my the way my hips moved, a bit like a ballroom dancer. And then one day I danced in front of you, and you, you know, you, in a really positive way, you kind of just let me get on with it without putting any pressure on me, or making any judgments. You were just in your own energy,
Mm.
and so I felt safe to dance in front of you. And then that meant I was able to move more freely. And then you were like, "Wow, you're a good dancer," and I was like, "Oh, oh." And it took years actually to understand that the reason sexual lust exists and desire for what a woman should look like, also through discovering the dance, is that I felt really vulnerable, and I had to go really deep to discover this. But I felt vulnerable dancing because I was afraid of being sexualized by a woman. I was like, what? And so then I went on a journey of like, oh, so my sexualization of you, of women, was because I was sexualizing myself. Because one of the most incredible things we discovered on our journey is that every judgment we had about each other is because we're mirrors, because of twin flames, it was judgments we had on ourselves. And I was like, what? I'm sexualizing myself? And so we did an investigation. We sat opposite each other, and he said, well, what memory comes up when we first sexualized? And I don't even want to say it because there were there were memories that came up of just, you, there were loads of memories, but the one that I can share that came up was, we used to, when I was growing up in the street, we used to hold, all the kids in the street used to get together, and we used to have water fights, balloon fights, water guns, stuff like that, and it was really good fun, barbecues and stuff. Not like these days where everybody's like, "Oh, get away from me!" It was really community based in the 80s, and I was sat with this woman who was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years older than me, and I was 8 years old. And I was sat like this, like how the shorts go like this, and she made fun out of me for having an erection. And I didn't know what an erection was because I was 8. And I was really confused because I felt, I didn't feel good. And I remember I was like doing this to my head and looking at the floor, and my brother goes, "What's wrong? What's up with you?" And I said, she was just taking the mickey out of me. She used this word, and he explained what it was to me. And I went bright red, and I felt so humiliated. And that's what sexual abuse is, it's humiliation. And sexualization comes from that. It's a real deep distortion of humiliation. And so that scarred me. And so I was humiliated by the feminine. And I think this is a wound for a lot of men. This, a lot of talk about how men should look, and women, and men do this to women as well, and it's all based on humiliation. And what we discovered in our journey is that all these things that men wish from women is actually a mirror for what they want from themselves.
Mm.
And it got really deep and really profound, and sometimes it got a bit messy, but it for I think for me personally that was the most difficult. You've started on a big one, really, because you saw the pain I went through to heal it.
Mm.
In order to heal sexualization, it's not just sexualization of what happened to you in this lifetime, or as you, as I am as a man now. It was the sexualization of my soul, the sexualization of
Mm.
love. And that's what gets in between men and women in this current day in society, like Tinder, dating, Bumble, all that crap, and the porn and magazines. Women have to go through so much to be seen as a pure image in judgment of a man. It's so much nonsense. And when we went deeper with it, we realized that there was this masculine wound of destroying his own reputation in the eyes of a woman, and that the woman had destroyed her image in the eyes of men. And then we mirrored that, and the same was true for the masculine and the feminine. So the masculine, in a way, because it holds feminine energy, ruined his image in his own it got really deep and quite profound.
Yeah, so thank you. That starts to describe when you start uncovering things between each other in your partnership. If you're entering into a sacred relationship, you will start to be able to not only hold your own energy whilst these things are arising, and such things. Yeah, you're right, like the topic of desire is huge. It's huge because like that's what people want. They want a relationship, they want a sacred
But it's
partnership.
sexualization, not desire.
Yeah, it's the sexualization.
Because desire is
Yeah,
a different word. Desire
yeah,
to me is a heartfelt wish, like
yeah,
Mary
yeah,
Poppins.
and the purity of the desire is really the straight from the core pure essence of the soul wishing to recognize itself. And that's the desire, that's the pure desire in which we can meet each other as sacred mirrors. That soul desires to recognize ourselves and to recognize one another. That would be a pure desire. That's like the only desire worth living for. So all this other thing, like you said, it is based off the back of trauma. You said a traumatic event. Like that is basically how everybody's constructing their lives, off the back of trauma. That's why people can't meet. That's why we can't meet a relationship. It's why communities are breaking down, etc., etc. And what we're doing is we're saying, let's meet in those places
Yeah, can I just talk
so
into
that we
that?
can come back
Yeah,
together again.
I want to talk into, the how the journey begins before I met you, because I realize it's very difficult and different for men, because I realized that this level of work, where we have met others who are doing this level of work, not like we're doing it, but let's say the spiritual light work, the growth and the evolution into higher consciousness. I noticed that there's just hardly any men that know how to do the work, because they're stuck in shame avoidance. And I wanted to just say that before I met Hazel, I had been through a lifetime of violence, where to the point, it's kind of creepy how violence followed me my whole life. Like, I would just be walking down the street, and I remember some guy hit me around the back of the head. Another time, some guy just punched me in the ear and then in the mouth. Neither of those had any provocation. None of my fights did. And then one time I was at university, I was drunk. Cut a long story short, I stumbled, knocked a guy's chips out of his hand. And the next thing I know, my head was on the edge of a curb bleeding. And he used my head like a football for about a minute and a half. And he just beat the hell out of any of my friends that tried to get him off me. And I spent the last 20 years healing that. And before I met Hazel, I went through, I would say, nearly 20 years of just wanting to kill myself. I was so depressed. I had apathy, and apathy essentially is when you feel like the whole world is just sat on your chest. And it comes from the destruction of our dreams, not being able to make our dreams come true. I found it very difficult to get out of bed. And I was at university, right? I was supposed to be going to lectures, but I was drinking every day. And after I got my head kicked in, and it wasn't until years and years later, like about 15 years later, that I managed to get out of my hometown and I moved to London. And I was diagnosed with CPTSD, and then I went on a journey with that, and there was narcissism, and then there was bipolar, and all of these stuffs. And every time I asked, how do I heal this? And they said, well, it's incurable. You'll have to live with it for the rest of your life. And I was like, that's absolute bullshit. That was the attitude I had internally. I didn't say that. I was lost. I was ignorant. I was unaware. And so I went to see a psychotherapist to help me identify my emotions. That was step one. Then I had lots of injuries, head injuries, loads of head injuries, broken fingers, nearly lost my leg, um, loads of injuries. I started seeing a physiotherapist. Then I started seeing a yoga teacher, a Pilates teacher, a chiropractor, an osteopath, a nutritionist, started biohacking, started getting into wellness, meditation. And the last thing I did was I met a shaman. because I tried everything to, before I met you, I tried everything that I felt I could and that was available to me with the money I had and the situation I was in. I tried everything I could to get to a place where I could wake up feeling like I'm here, that I'm happy, and that I had a life. But I just couldn't get there. I tried so much. Like I had a fit. I was paying like loads of money because I managed to land a decent job. I had a fitness instructor that I saw him so often that we actually became friends at Javier, right? So I was paying for private physio, which was about 200 quid a go. I was paying for a chiropractor. I was paying for head healing. I was I was paying for all this biohacking stuff, um, a fitness instructor 4 times a week, like hourly. That was a cost of fortune. I was I was doing all I could and Pilates lessons. So I was spending a fortune on my health, which I thought was exactly the right thing to do. And that's one of my main messages for men starting out on the journey. You've got to just first just take ownership for number one. Take ownership for your own journey, and I wasn't, yeah, just none of that dating nonsense or sleeping with women. Just like come into purity if you're really serious about this journey. Come into purity. It's not about meeting a woman and settling down, and it's about number one, first sort your own shit out. And I had to do that. I had to come into a healthy place, and then when I tried everything, I remember I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, started talking about ayahuasca, and I was like, I don't know, something in my soul went, yes, that's immediately you have to do something about that. And I was like, okay, what is this stuff? I had no idea. Went to a biohacking conference in July, I think, of, I don't know when it was, 2019, June 2019, I think. And there was this woman there called Kiki, and she was the only woman there that, on top of nurturance, right? Because I was there for nurturance to improve my mental health, but no one there was talking about mental health. No one. There was this one woman there who was talking about ice diving and sexual abuse. She'd been sexually abused, and she became an ice diver to help with it. Like she was on Netflix and everything. And I said, "Hey, look, I've also been through a lot, and I'd love to chat with you." She's like, "Well," um, and I mentioned to her about plant medicine. She goes, "Oh yeah," or she mentioned it to me, something like that, something about mushrooms or something. And I said, "Yeah, it'd be cool to chat to you. Have you got time now?" She's like, "No, but meet me on Thursday. Where do you live?" I was like, "I live in Streatham." She's like, "Me too." I was like, "Oh right, okay, that's great." We met in Starbucks, and she immediately said, I started telling her about ayahuasca. She's going, "Oh, I'm actually going to Holland to do plant medicine on Friday," and it was Wednesday. "Do you want to come?" I was like, "Yes." And I just said yes, and ended up in a bufo ceremony with 20 people I'd never met in the middle of Holland, and I was terrified. And the first thing I remember was, "Oh, this is going to help me cure my PTSD." And I remember falling for 20 minutes, going, "Ah," like this. And but it was actually only about 60 seconds. And I woke up and everybody was staring at me, and I was like, "Has it worked? Has it worked?" Like I woke out of this huge vision where I just completely left my body, and I was like, "I still feel the same," and I just started crying, and it didn't work. Like I was looking for this silver bullet from plant medicine. But what it did was it gave me, the vision I got was it gave me a blank slate. It was like a clear board, a clear start. And I woke up, I remember, in bed 3 days later in the middle of the night, and it was just this energy of lightning just like shooting through my whole body, and I felt incredible. And then I started the ayahuasca journey, and yeah, it cleaned me out and purged me, and I met so many charlatans, charlatan shamans pretending to be shamans,
Mm.
and things like that. And that was really damaging. I got caught up in all of that, a lot of emotional abuse, and I can see how people can fall into that. He was sleeping with loads of women. I can see how all that's dangerous, and things like that. and it is very dangerous. I don't just mean the sexual abuse; I mean the spiritual abuse.
Mm.
Very, very toxic. And so I went through all of this before I met Hazel, and I learned a lot along the way, but I realised that nobody had a clue what they were doing. Everybody was repeating the same nonsense, and everybody wanted to be a shaman except me. And then people started saying to me, "You're this, you're this." I'm like, "No, no, I'm just here to heal." But some of the visions that I saw in my first ever ayahuasca ceremony, they actually came true. They weren't just visions like I normally used to get. They were prophecies
Mm.
of my own journey, and they were wild. I was like, "That's
Mm.
me." And ayahuasca was like, "That's you."
Mm.
And I was like, "Okay, great." And then 4 years later, it happened, and I was like,
Mm.
"Whoa!" And I saw some stuff that still hasn't happened, but a lot has happened,
Yeah.
and it helped me get to the place where I was like, "Okay, nobody knows what to do. What can I do next?" And then I found I found another medicine that came to me, and it was homegrown mushrooms. They grow in the land here, and I met a guy who showed me how to pick them so that I didn't kill myself picking the wrong mushroom. I didn't, trust myself to do that, and I took them, and I learned a really important lesson of um, never take plant medicine on your own when you haven't got a clue what you're doing.
Mm.
And I learned that lesson the hard way. And I was like reaching out to women that I'd met on a journey, shamans and stuff like that. Like, hey, I'm getting this strong feeling that we should sit in a ceremony, mushroom ceremony on the winter solstice. This was in 2020. I wasn't part of the spiritual community. I didn't buy into any of that stuff, but there was this whole thing going on. And I just felt it. And they were like, nah, no point. And I was like, what am I going to do? And it was my birthday coming up and Christmas. So I just want to get away this year. I don't want to do the normal stuff. And so I reached out to a couple that I met in an ayahuasca dieta in Peru. They're like, yeah, come over. And I came over and I met you.
Mm.
And but I'd been through all of that before I met you.
Mm.
I'd really gone hardcore into self healing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that you had chosen your own healing journey
Bingo.
before we met.
Yeah.
And this is a really, really important point,
Yeah.
because I know, and also from experience, that people go into spiritual arenas to meet somebody. And that is a really big no-no. If and I've seen it every time. It holds a particular frequency within the person, that if they have gone into some kind of ceremony or some kind of methodology in order to meet someone, or they come from that place of sexual desire, that lust, even if it's unconscious and they're hiding it, you they are, I will say, I'll be bold enough to say this, from my perspective, they are not choosing the spiritual evolutionary journey. It's another cycle of, how much can I fulfill my desires before you're ready to dump that one and go on to the next one. So what you bring up is a really important point about the fact that you had got to a certain place, you'd had enough. You'd had enough of what life was presenting you. And you had started taking your own journey
Yeah.
even before we met.
But I did hit rock
And that is
bottom.
key.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
key.
I did hit rock bottom, but what I realized, and this probably applies to a lot of people, is that I don't think I had a bottom. That I just, it just kept getting deeper and deeper. It kept getting worse and worse
Mm.
because I was in self pity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important message I want to add, is that the cure to self pity is compassion, which means taking action to take care of yourself.
Mm.
And that's really hard on your own. You can't do it on your own. And I
Mm.
reached out, and you have to take responsibility one step at a time.
Mm. Yeah. And so this is one of the beautiful things, and you mentioned it further earlier on in the conversation about um, each person taking their own responsibility and doing this work together so that you can actually get deeper. Because actually, when you meet your first rock bottom, you think, oh, this is my rock bottom. But actually, once you start excavating, which you're able to do when you're working in a sacred partnership like this, because evolution means not only expansion like that way, it's also like excavation right into the roots for the cleaning together. If you're not on your own journey together, if one person is hiding, like really hiding, like just going along with you to ceremonies or doing yoga with you,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
an obsession.
yeah, they're not on their own journey. And again, you can tell because there'll come a point where you're not able to sustain that frequency of hiding within that partner or lying to yourself, believing that they are doing the work. That lie between in that relationship is going to be exposed at some point.
Yeah.
And that's where, even when you think you're in a conscious relationship, which is what I was in before, I thought, oh yeah, I'm in a conscious relationship, we're both doing the work. No, we weren't. I was doing the work. I was holding the love frequency. The other one was just based on desire and feeding off energy.
This is a
And
masculine
this is,
trope.
yeah,
It is. Yeah,
yeah,
we've seen this in so many relationships where the woman is doing the work and the man's just along for the ride because he doesn't want to lose her.
yeah, yeah. And so this is the core of things like objectification and possession,
Possession and
ownership,
control. Yeah.
control,
Yeah.
etc. And all of that is breeding ground for the eventual
Separation.
separation and the exposure of the toxicity and the shame avoidance that is in pretty much every partnership that breaks.
Basically, it's an immediate explosion of exposure of all of the things that you hate about each other.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
that's what we've seen, and it's explosive and extremely destructive, and when kids are involved, it's awful.
yeah,
Or even animals, when animals are involved.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
and friendship, it
yeah,
destroys everything.
yeah,
That's why what we've been doing, we've essentially done the opposite to what the ego wanted us to do, and which was essentially fight, separate, run away from each other, and not be able to acknowledge or accept each other's love.
yeah,
And so we just did the opposite and loved each other more. Like, ah,
yeah.
I love you more. Ah!
My ego really hates you right now. But like learning
Yeah,
how to get to the point where you can actually sit in that energy field to allow it to crack you open, release you, so that you can then move forward and meet each other in a greater way of love. And this is what we do. This is what we do. So if you want to work with us, I mean, this is very um, advanced work. So if you're on your spiritual journey already and you're reaching a plateau and you're like, I can't get any further, what else is available? Well, this is available because we work with these next evolutionary consciousness realms, let's say. So this is beautiful. This is really powerful, and also I just want to just to reinforce what you've been saying here. It's like, if you're under the if there's issues in your partnership, you're already in partnership, right? If there's issues in your partnership that keep repeating themselves year on year, getting like perhaps more extreme, oh, we can't figure it out. um some of what we've been talking about today will be some of the toxic roots that can be cleared out, but each person has to take responsibility for their own journey. So this is really key. And if you are in partnership and you think, oh my goodness, I'm doing my inner work and I've come to a point where actually I realize my partner, they're not actually doing their work. We have an argument, you put all the effort into bringing the consciousness in. You even give them some tools. So they get very clever at mirroring you back, for example. But when they go away, they're not actually doing their work to integrate that. If that is what is in your partnership, oh, sneeze, it's very possible that the partnership will end because it's not grounded on solid foundation. Or you will end up compromising part of your soul in order to maintain that illusion
Yeah,
of
and then
your
eventually
relationship.
it will just separate on its own because everything will be exposed because it will just
Yeah,
it will compound on itself, and
yeah,
it will just get worse and worse before it explodes.
yeah. And that is essentially when we're working with these conscious energies right now of summertime, which we're in, like summer solstice, the full exposure of light here in the summer solstice, okay? And take this on board for next year as well, and just become aware of how the seasons can support your own personal evolution. Is that in this heightened exposure that is right now, anything that is being exposed will want to be exposed. So yes, there's a celebration here. 2 days ago, the energy that was coming in was absolutely sublime. Yesterday, there's been sabotages. Today, there's been sabotages. It's highlighting other things that need to be cleaned out, healed, exposed, etc.
But if it's not exposed verbally, then it gets stuck in the body, and an ego baby will come out and it will erupt into an argument. So if there's something on your mind, there's something that's bothering you about your partner and you don't share it, then it turns into a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the way, like we've started demonstrating a bit today and giving some ways in which to work into this. It's very refined work because I and we work on reading the soul, the frequencies of the soul, what the soul has journeyed through. Like when I'm listening to Alistair talking, I can see like he's switching into different timelines that are available. This is one of my gifts, is that I'm sitting here watching energetically the light move around to different experiences that Alistair has been through in order to connect the dots and the pieces to then bring forward that answer. And this is how we've worked. This is how we've worked with the purity of the heart and the body consciousness. Because I don't want anything from Alistair other than that he gets to live his soul in this lifetime and he gets to experience love. I don't want anything more from him. And when you can be in partnership like that, and that you have that common goal of that's the kind of level at which you're working towards each other, you're able to clear out your vessel. And if you're lucky enough to have a big enough breakdown or radical changing life scenario enough where trauma or it is hit you so hard that it just radically changes your reality, you have a big clean out and you choose for love in those moments, then what starts to awaken is the recognition of the frequencies of love. And this is what we're moving into right now as a humanity. This clearing out that is happening, these things that people are going through, if you bring consciousness to it, you are able to evolve and stop repeating old patterns, and therefore stop repeating patterns that happen in relating.
Yeah, I think we'll call it here now, but because I want to start another topic of conversation.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been really great to hear from you and just to like hone in a little bit deeper on how it works in partnership. So
Yeah, well, I think I'll interview you next.
yeah. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being here in our living room as part of our conversation. Really, really value you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us and join us in the prophecy portal so that you can get a bit closer and have these conversations live with us. Yeah, and like, and subscribe. So see you next time. Thank you so much. Thanks for walking this path with us.
Thank you.